Our third speaker this morning is Frank Delahunty, and I'm going to preface his presentation a little bit because it really struck me. I was invited to speak to the Industry Super Funds Investment Managers Annual Investment Conference held at the Alice Springs Casino a few years ago, and there was probably 300 or 400 investment managers for the industry super funds in the room, and they were asked for a presentation about agriculture. They'd sort of started to get agriculture on their radar, and so I gave them a fairly standard presentation about the nature of the industry, some of the risks, some of the business arrangements and those sorts of things. And it got to the end of it, and the questions were quite, I don't know whether you'd call it hostile, but certainly quite negative in terms of what they were asking. And the issues that they raised were things like the exit strategy, and all those sorts of arrangements. And I sat down and spoke to one of the senior board members afterwards when we had lunch, and I said, well, that didn't seem to strike a chord. What do you think the problem was there? And he said, well, you've got to understand a couple of things. The inflow of funds that they get are driven by where they sit in the ranking tables. So they do have a very short-term investment focus. And in addition to that, a lot of their remuneration is structured around quarterly results, and therefore they're not interested in investment, or not greatly interested in investment that they can't mark to market almost on a quarterly basis to realise what their quarterly bonus is. So he said, you will always struggle to get them interested in any extent in anything particularly long-term, particularly risky, that might fluctuate a bit, because it comes home to roost very, very, very personally in terms of the remuneration and reward. So I thought that was a very interesting insight, and it also highlighted a challenge in relation to agriculture, and this notion of perhaps not being able to mark to market, perhaps not being able to exit, but at least to get an indication or an understanding of the relative health and the relative returns of the sector over time, so that investors from outside the sector have some visibility in terms of how the sector is performing. And so that, I think, is one of the conclusions of the report Richard spoke about, was the need for some better information about investment returns in the sector, and the availability of that as an ongoing thing. And our next speaker, Frank Delahunty, has been working on that very thing for, it probably seems like decades, does it, Frank? But it's probably not that long. But I think what Frank's going to talk about is advancing some of those issues in a way that might actually be a bit of a breakthrough. So I'm very happy to introduce Frank as our speaker today, and I think you'll be fascinated to hear the presentation he's got and the concept that he's been developing, and what difference that might make in terms of the future of the investment environment in agriculture in Australia. So please welcome Frank.
I've been involved, with Gary's comment, I've been involved in the funds management sector since 1992, 24 years. My background is accounting, but I started with the concept to get an alternative investment capital into agriculture on the son of a farmer. And so successfully in 92, 96, after 4 years, raised $60 million for the Warrakiri Cropping Trust, which is still going, and Dirt Management was a management company. So I've been involved, and to be truthful, I don't get many conferences, but the stories are still the same from 24 years ago about the difficulty of getting our institutions. We just focused on institutions in Australia, which is the fourth largest savings pool in the world. Why? Because we've got 9.5% statutory obligation. So we've got the fourth largest savings pool in the world, but the chart showed earlier from Richard, it's, what is it, 0.3% or something. So I've heard all these stories before, and to be truthful, I sit back with amusement, thinking it's a hard job to change the institutions. And I think the short-termism is an issue. So, what we're here launching today is an ag index. So we've got the alternative of ABARES, and what we've got is after 3.5 years, and David, sorry David, couldn't see you under your glasses. David Sackett and Michael Blakeney and Hancock, Daniel Trantis here. So we've over 3.5 years, we've been trying to form an index that institutions will accept as being an indicator of what the ag sector is about. So in '97 I won a Churchill Fellowship and went overseas to study institutional investment in agriculture, and through that I understood that the ag managers in America got together in 1986, and from 1990 they've started to produce an ag index, an NCREF farmland ag index. And so when I stepped away from Sustainable Ag Fund, which I'll talk about later, I got in contact with some people who run indices, and the first group wasn't NCREF, but Andrew Australia at Hancock said we should speak with NCREF in the US. So we've now got the same platform, similar platform that the US NCREF Farmland Index. Who knows the NCREF Farmland Index? Hands up. I'm amazed that a few people don't put their hand up. So it's an index that is running each quarter in America, and we're going to start this with results that are coming up in this presentation. And so September quarter is getting close to be due. So every quarter we're going to get our income and capital, so performance index. So, how do I work these? So, what we've got is data from 6 managers, and I'll explain those in a minute. It's $827 million over 48 properties. So this is a farm-by-farm performance. It's not a fund manager or trust. It's not at the high level, it's at the farm level. What happens when the income and capital results leave the farm, go to the managers, is their issue. We're just looking at the farm-by-farm performance, which is very typical of all indices. So the big indices are commercial and industrial properties. So this building might be owned by someone, and it'll go into a property index. We're just putting out 48 farms to start with, over 827 million. It records income and capital on a quarterly basis. So as I said, we're based on the US NCREF Farmland Index. It's been doing it since '91, and so this data is held, and the IP is held by NCREF in the US. Any questions? So the main thing of this is quarterly. We're going to release the June financial year figures, but they're the quarterly figures. So in September we're going to reduce the next quarter's figures. It's a quarterly basis so that we're in there in the other asset classes. So we've got the All Ordinaries Index that comes out each night on the TV. Donald Trump comes in, the index goes down, they digest it and it goes up. It doesn't matter, it goes up and down. But the All Ordinaries Index is, I don't know, 5,200 or something. It was 5,400 a few weeks ago. So what we're not going to be doing weekly or daily, but we're going to be doing quarterly. The main thing is that an index to compare with other asset investment classes. So, you know, we've got the 5 or 6 major classes. Shares, in Australian portfolio super funds, shares which is local and overseas represent about 50 to 55% of the total portfolio. Personally, I think the volatility in shares is far higher than what is in agriculture when you've got a land component, especially when you've got a high land component. But people go to shares for the volatility and the risk and the ups and downs because they can exit. And we talked about the exit a minute ago. So I think with every ease there's also a difficulty. The collection methodology is a proven system used in the US, institutionally recognised. At the end of the day, confidentiality is the mainstay of all indices. So if you're looking at any index, you will not understand who and what is contributed by XYZ manager. We're starting at a lower figure than we would have liked, but we're going to get started, and we're looking to gain other ag managers to produce the data to build the fund up, and we'll talk about how the American fund started. So the comparison is ABARES. I think if everyone's out there marketing, we use ABARES. ABARES comes out in March, which is 9 months after the end of the financial year, and that's 18 months after the first quarter of that financial year. It's too old. Too old. I had a discussion with Tris Kalish from ABARES at other conferences about the age, but I think it's too old. So the data subscribers are managers who are looking to get regular timing, putting their data up. We don't know what their numbers are, but they're the people who are subscribing. Laguna Bay hasn't subscribed data yet, but the second fund they've got going will go in as they acquire properties. So Growth Farms, Blue Sky, Go Farm, Rural Farms Management, Australian Agribusiness Group, Hancock and Laguna Bay. Now over the last 3.5 years, I've spoken to, I think, every manager in the space, or 80% of the managers, and for various reasons they haven't come on board, so we decided to get started, get out there, and we'll go around again and look to us and get other subscribing. At the end of the day, they're the data subscribers. We then have another group called the external subscribers. And so that's made up for professionals such as banks, valuers and universities who are also committed to getting a regular and timing accurate index. So CBR, Agribusiness, Colliers, ANZ, Bravo, NAB and the Commonwealth. So you recognise we've got, really it's just a bit of a donation. We had to, NECREF wanted $50,000 as starting subscriptions, and we've got there by the total of these two groups. But it's not a long-term sort of project. We need to get more managers, more subscriptions, and the index will continue. CBRE have been a strong supporter of us. The resource of this is my computer at home. I haven't got an infrastructure, so CBRC will send out the data. So I don't know if anyone saw the Farmland Index press release. Can you give me an indication who saw it? Hands up, hands up, hands up. Jesus. Thanks for putting your hand up. So who's NECREF? For those who don't understand NECREF, it's National Council of Real Estate Investment Fiduciaries. It's a not-for-profit in Chicago. It's got 13 staff. I haven't met them. I've spoken to them over phones regularly, but haven't physically met them. So we've adapted the platform that the US have done. So the data gets sent direct to the US. They manage it and send it back. It's quite simple in this global village we live in. But their mainstay is commercial industrial property. So they've got $516 trillion of all the commercial industrial. So that's their main income flow. I think I said there's 13 staff at NECREF, so it's not a big organisation. So the Farmland Index started in 1990. They got together from 1986, the managers, 6 or 7 managers. Started with 336 million, over 197 properties, and now they've got 7.8 billion, over 729. So, and it's grown in the last 6 or 7 years. The funds under management is growing, which is again this continuing interest of professional investors getting involved in the ag space. So I've seen that by watching this data since '97 when I got involved in it. So what the US have just released their September quarter, so just the promptness of data. So in September, they released it about a week or two ago. I think it was about a month, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Their September was 8.6% on an annual basis. And they split up between permanent and annual. Permanent is horticulture typically, you know, a tree that lasts for 15 to 25 years compared to annual cropping livestock. They don't have livestock over there. Timberland is 3.6, 3.3. What you've got to understand is the numbers go up and down. 8.6, when I last looked at this, it was something like 14.4. So the cyclical nature of the numbers just go up and down. So we've had some support on this. Nick was quoted in the press release, so he's making comments like, include the sector as an important component of a balanced investment portfolio. First state who are an investor with Blue Sky. The last comment there is a critical step in providing greater confidence to potential investors. Damien Webb, Head of Fixed Income and Real Estate. And then Alex Crossing of CBRE in Singapore. They underline there, it's good quality, timely and relevant information on how the sector performs. So that sort of summarises what the index is about. What are the numbers? For the year to June 16, it's a total of 23.9, income 8.3, appreciation, capital appreciation 14.7. What we've got there is a 12 month figures up to December, March and June. You can see that they're fairly solid numbers with a big kick in June in capital appreciation. So what has happened, I understand, I don't see the numbers. To me, they were surprising numbers. So I chased around all the investors with lots of data and said, are you happy with the numbers? And blue sky, Nick. Yeah, Nick was one of them who basically said, you know, there's been large capital appreciations in water, in cattle and land. So that all coming together in that quarter has meant the spike up is 23.9. Now, we hopefully in next quarter by, sometime in November, we'll be reporting the September quarter. I think I assume it'll come down. If it goes up, it's going to be historic. But these are the examples of 48 farms over $827 million that have produced these results. So there's been a large kick in the fair bit of capital that's come through fairly quickly. You go to ABARES, we might roll up in March next year at Canberra and get the conference, and it won't come out with these numbers, but they're going to be 9 months late. Any questions on these numbers?
First two lines are the opposite of what I would expect. I guess more stable question. The story about the income being incredibly variable and capital appreciation being relative to size.
So, what was your...
It's an observation question. I know you said you were surprised.
Yeah. I'm not involved in funds management anymore, so I don't even see the data, which is good because I don't know. What I did was speak to all the managers, and they basically said, "Yep, they're confident the numbers are right." So my understanding is water. I'm not sure which water. Permanent water has gone from 800 to 2,000. Is that reasonably correct?
Yeah, depending on the entitlement class.
Yeah.
That's probably pretty reasonable over. That's probably over an 18-month period up to the middle of this year.
So, you know, next quarter or the quarter after, they might say it's $1,500, will come back down. You know, I'm surprised. When I was managing, and I'll talk about the numbers a little bit, these numbers are higher than I've seen in the truth. But they're a mixture of horticulture, permanent and annual, and that's what the numbers perform. And they're at the farm level. So management costs, whatever management costs are, I understand all the management costs in industries, but it's just at the farm level. So I think you've got to understand, this is a farm. It's not goes up to the trust in Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane, and they take out their X% and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, they're the numbers. But what we're going to do is watch and see over the next quarter and the quarter after. David.
I think it's just worth understanding that appreciation is often done annually and included once every 4 quarters in effect. And so probably that's abnormal in that a lot of valuations were done leading up to the end of the financial year, so it included a lot of land appreciation. Next quarter there might be very few valuations done. So unlike the income, which is rolling quarterly, the valuations will be much lumpier in the index because they're not done on a quarterly basis.
All these numbers, it's an institutional grade investment. All these numbers, and people ask me, is it going to be high, you know, your 50% of partnerships going there? To be truthful, we're not going to concentrate on that because we know that private people fiddle the figures or change the figures or whatever they want to do. These are institutional grade investments which are audited. So there's other people looking at the numbers, the external auditors look at the numbers, looking at the valuation methodology. One of the rules is that we have an independent valuer every 3 years. So it could be that, I don't know, 2 or 3 of those that independent valuers have been holding a fairly static figure for 2 years and then thrown in a 3rd year. So the main data is from audited financial statements. So the question of the data shouldn't be questioned because independent auditors are looking over it. So it's a cost.
Just a question there, Frank. To what extent does the index genuinely and legitimately represent the sector? Because is it a bias sample where it's almost aggregate or like an advertisement of the best performing businesses wanting kudos for how well their businesses are run and therefore are willing to participate in the reporting?
Yep, I think that's a statement. my feeling is, what's the other option? You've got ABARES, which is a survey, and I understand it's something like 1,600 cropping and pastoral operations and 400 dairies, I think. So is that representative? I think the whole base of the indices is, at the moment, you know, we started with the America 350 million, they've got 7.8 billion. We're never going to have the whole sector. So is it representative? The argument is no, it's not. Is it regular? Yes, it is. Do we build it up and grow and then we get into deeper? Once we get deeper, we'll go to regions, we'll go down to commodities, but at the moment we're at the high level. And I don't think it does represent, but it's a, you can see, I don't know exactly what all those managers do, but they're in livestock and cropping, they're in horticulture. So if you understand each of those managers, you'll understand just as much as I do what their operations are. But it's indicative of institutional grade investors at the farm level. But is it indicative of agriculture in total? I don't think industry does. But is it timely? Is the figures correct? I have to say yes to that.
See, I guess if I was a Gary, I'd want to know what is the underdevelopment.
What's the what?
I want to know who are the poor performers, because they're the businesses that I may want to acquire and bring it up to the standard of your index.
Yeah.
So that's the information I'd like.
You're not going to find it out from the indices because the whole thing is confidentiality. So if you then, I don't know, I'm not going to get involved in that, but if you want to go and speak to the 6 managers and say what are your results compared to the industry, you might get the answer. That's for the agriculture manager running his business to give that answer. But I don't know. It's easy to say I don't know because I just don't want to know the data. I just want to get the regularity and timing and the whole discussion about next quarter will come out and the capital gain, let's say it's static because it's just a quiet quarter. Just have the continuing conversation of what ag's doing. The main thing I'm saying is go to other asset classes. So the stock market took 4 or 5% negative return over the last week. But people will say, go into shares over the long term, so this long-term and short-term discussion, over long term shares will beat agriculture, but it's not. You could have bought 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump got elected and you've lost 4 or 5%. Now my experience in ag is we basically didn't lose capital because we had a lot of it tied up in land. So, you know, but it's the exit and all that sort of stuff. So it's more a discussion what ag is compared to other asset classes is part of the discussion on index. That's off cue. Good question, eh? So there's cost of this. NECREFs and not-for-profit. So at the moment, the data contributors, the 6 or 7 that we've got listed, are paying $7,500. There's been an underwriting support by CBRE in relation to that, and then the external subscribers, the banks, property valuers, universities and stuff. The subscription fee is $3,000. For that you get the Australian Farmland Index, which is it's a commencing index. There's no doubt we want to grow it and spread it and get deeper sort of data. And then you also get the US Farmland Index, which has got since 1991 up there on a quarterly basis. Down into regions, if you see their quarterly report, they go down in the Mississippi and the Delta and all those sort of places. It goes down into annual versus permanent. So there's a lot of analytical tools by regional that we're going to get to once we get more data coming in. So there's a technical and governance committee, and again, we haven't got formalities a mile long and this sort of stuff, but communications, David and Michael have been very helpful to just be checking and balancing all the sort of stuff that's coming from America, sending it back. So as we get going, there will be a greater emphasis on the governance point of view, but we're following the methodology that's been applied in the US since '91. So, what's my role in this? I've been involved in the ag sector for 25 years, but for this has been a labour of love. I won a Churchill Fellowship, as I said, and what I saw was ag managers who want to get in the institutional, professional, high net worth space. They believe they need to get an index. So I've just sat that back while I went off and managed funds. And this has just been a labour of love. This is my community service from Churchill. If you want to talk about Churchill Fellowships, speak to me after this. So in '97 I travelled overseas, US, Canada, Germany, London. But the thing that I learnt and studied was that the US guys got together to get this index going. So what we've done here is nearly a similar thing 20 years later. Again, Michael Blake and David Sackett have been quite useful in that. So I've had 2 goes at managing funds. So in '96, commenced with $60 million and ended up with 85 capital gains. So these are the numbers. They don't get reported too often, and it's part of me sort of frustration. For 10 years I was running Dirt Warrakiri, and those are the numbers that we produced. So it's not quite at the farm level, but it's before and after feed sort of conversation. And then I was a co-founder of the Sustainable Ag Fund. In 2009 we got 145 million from 6 local super funds and a high net worth. And due to health reasons, in 2009 I stepped away. But proudly, the money that was invested was great at the time I stepped away. But we were going through the hockey stick, getting the establishment, the rotations, the systems in place.